they grew up, they like dolls and girly things, makeup, and how to do their hair. I grew up liking to spend time with my dad fixing the car, and I, for some reason, have always fascination with trains. I grew up in the Philippines, as most of you know, and I always saw these train tracks. And I always remember asking, or waiting for trains to come by, but I never saw a train up until I moved here 12 years ago. And so, but I always have that fascination. When I was in high school, mind you, I was already in high school, and so I probably was around 15 or 16 at this time. And for Christmas, my mom asked me what I wanted. I remember asking her to get me a choo-choo train instead of a doll or clothes. And so I always have that fascination. I've always researched on them and just wondering if I will ever someday find a train, nevertheless, ride on them. So finally, back in 2004, I was a little bored, and I was already in real estate at this time. I was a little bored, needed time off from everything else, and I decided I'll go and buy myself a ticket at Amtrak. And so I just logged on the website and decided, well, I have a lot of friends in San Francisco. I'll just ride the Amtrak from Seattle to San Francisco, all by myself. I was so excited about it. Told everybody, told my parents, told my sister, told my friends. Not one of them supported me on it. All they said was, are you crazy? That's 23 hours and 20 minutes from King Street Station in Seattle to Maryville, California, close to San Francisco. I thought, I think that would be fun. But most people ask me, well, what are you going to do for 23 and a half hours, not knowing anybody? So I thought about that, and the night before I left, I went ahead and bought a book, because there's nothing else I'm able to do in that. But that trip turned out to be one of the most beautiful trips, most relaxing trips I've ever had. So I left Seattle at 10 o'clock in the morning, was excited about it, decided to turn off my cell phone so I don't have to have any connection with anybody else. And I sat right next to this gentleman. His name is Tim. And we started talking. And I found out that he just finished taking his bar exams. And before diving into that profession, he thought he'd go around the U.S. just riding the train. I thought, how amazing is that? We started talking, and I found out about his plans. I've told him about my profession, all of these things, and we just had a good conversation that we decided to exchange phone numbers and address to keep in touch. He got off Portland Station, and from Portland, somebody else came on. It was Bev and her daughter, Dee Dee. Bev is a teacher, and she lives in Portland, and she often go to Redding, California to visit her parents, and Dee Dee would always come along with her. Now with Bev and Dee Dee always, when she was a kid, she always liked doing that, but as she got older, she never wanted to go with her mom when she became a teenager. So when Bev left and went to the bathroom, I started talking with Dee Dee and started to ask her questions about why she doesn't want to go, but at that age, she always wanted to spend time with her friends, of course, instead of spending time with her mom in the train, and she's always bored about it. Same thing that happened between Tim and I. Bev, Dee Dee, and I started having that connection. And before we separated ways, we were not in the same tracks, as they call it. We exchanged numbers and addresses, and mind you, it's always me asking for their numbers and their addresses. I always just thought if I have connection with somebody, I should be in touch with them. It's not, I would always wonder what happens to them if I don't. And after that, I walked over to the resting track, as they call it. I was there reading my book, and I was so into my book that I probably read 2 chapters of it straight on. And then I remembered some of my friends saying, like, how bored would you be, just being there by yourself? And I just thought to myself, well, I'm not really bored. So I do this, time passes by, and then I all of a sudden looked up. And it was around November of 2004, and I saw this beautiful field with yellow, orange, green color with cattle and horses. for me, I still remember that exact moment. I remember seeing that and just thought to myself, I felt like the train just slowed down a little bit. And I was just watching it, and I thought it was so beautiful having to see that, and I've never seen it before. I have no idea where I was at that time. Moving on, I met Roger. Roger is one of the helpers. I don't think he was the conductor, but he was one of the helpers in there. And he decided to introduce himself, and we were talking, and I found out that he also came from the Philippines. And the reason why he approached me, because I reminded him of his daughter. And so we started talking, but he had to work, so after that we parted ways. And then I met Jennifer. Jennifer is a ballroom dancer in San Francisco. That was before this thing called Dancing with the Stars came on. But I've always been fascinated with ballroom dancing. My mom is a ballroom dancer, and so I've always been active with that. So we had an instant connection. We started talking about ballroom dancing. I don't think I remember talking to another person my age at that time where they're also interested in ballroom dancing. And from that time, unfortunately, she had to also get off at Reading, I believe, where our last stop was before going to Ameriville. And so we parted ways. I got her, obviously, address and phone number. And she said, she's going to San Francisco 2 days later. We should get in touch. And I said, of course. Didn't really think about it. And so it was time for me to go to bed. Mind you, I bought an economy ticket. So I, supposed to just sit there in that chair and hopefully sleep and fall asleep and all that. And then Roger went up to me and said, did you want to go find a room? I said, well, I only paid for economy. He said, well, you're so nice, so I'm just going to go, and we have an extra room, you can go ahead and sleep in there. And the first thing I asked him, is that legal? He told me, it's okay because it's our last stop, the next stop, then it will be in the morning, then you'll have to go back to the economy class. So I took his offer, and I went over there. So I had a wonderful bed, paying for economy. And then the very next day, I met Julie and VJ, who are newlyweds. They came from Chicago, and they're doing the Midwest and Northwest trip, and then going back through Utah and Colorado back to Chicago. And I thought that was also wonderful. And I also obviously got their phone number and addresses. To sum it all up, that 23 and a half hours, I found 6 lifelong friends. Up until now, all of them, except for Jennifer, who succumbed to cancer 2 years ago, I still keep in touch with them, and we still exchange Christmas cards. And Jennifer actually flew to Hawaii for our wedding, my wedding with my husband, and for her to be there, and she was actually one of my bridesmaids. Wow. So there's the 23 hours and 20-minute long, boring trip that most people thought, which turned out to be the most wonderful trip I've ever had. Thank you.